place that lets you know you're not the only nerdy true believer who's around. The comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store. Out among the stacks of new releases, browsing with your future new best friends. You're gonna find a book you'll love to pieces. The girl behind the counter recommends dollar books and shelves of graphic novels. Titles old and new, you'll find them all. With action figures, board games, toys, and models to add to your new Comic Wednesday haul. The comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store.
Ah, yes, now we are back on Comic Stripped. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And oh my God, it's the MCU's bleeding edge, Jeff Sloboda. How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's going on? How you doing, Mark?
Good. This is like your return since like what, May? Was
Yeah,
the last time I had you on?
it's been a minute.
Well, it's good to have you back, sir. Jeff was like, when are you going to bring me back? And I'm like, here's a list of shit. Pick one. So Jeff and I went back and forth, and we landed on Ghost World. We're going to compare the book to the movie tonight. And, we couldn't do this show without the one and only Alexis Hejna, who has also been splitting her time between the Radulich and Broadcasting Network and the MCU's Bleeding Edge. How you doing, Alexis?
What can I say? Apparently I'm popular, and I have no idea how the hell that happened.
You're in high demand. So, Jeff, as I said, I gave you that Wikipedia page of comic books that were adapted into movies, and you looked it over. So I guess Ghost World had been on your list of things you wanted to watch, and this was the opportunity?
Yeah, because honestly, I never watched it back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I just never, back then, I can't even remember. What was it, 2003, I think the movie came out?
Yeah, something like that.
2001.
Okay, 2001? Yeah, I think at that point, it just wasn't that interesting to me to watch. I think maybe I saw a little bit of it here and there on HBO and stuff like that, but so, and it just, the premise of it seemed interesting. I knew about the comic book, and also I like the fact that Scarlett Johansson's in it, and I think that was one of her first films. And then Thora Birch was really hot then, coming off of American Beauty and everything. Like, she was like valuable property. Like, she's basically like the main character of the film, I think.
Yes.
and the comic, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, honestly, Mark, that list you gave me had a lot of really good stuff on it.
How about you, Alexis? How familiar were you with the movie or the book before we opted to do this today?
A little bit. I hadn't read or seen the movie, but this came out when I was in 2001. I would have been a junior or senior in high school. And not going to lie, I was kind of the angsty on the outside kind of girl. So Thora Birch with the dark hair and the punky clothes, it kind of reminded me a little bit of myself. So what really caught my attention looking back on it is that this was the the movie adaptation was the first time that the Academy Awards had nominated a comic book for Best Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. So, really, this does have kind of a major input on that. I hate to say, looking back on it now, though, I think what makes me laugh the hardest, again, I hadn't read it, but there's a really good episode of The Simpsons where Daniel Clowes and a couple of other very famous independent comic artists guest star. And there's a scene where Lisa Simpson comes up to Clowes and says, I just want to tell you how much Ghost World affected me and how I could identify so much with the girls and reading this comic. Now I'm like, Lisa, why the hell were you reading this book?
What's funny about that is I said to my wife, I'm like, hey, check and see if Lily can do an RP test on Ghost World, because when I'm done with it, I bet she would like to read it. And I read it today and I'm like, well, I'm going to have to reconsider that.
Yeah.
This is not quite for a 10-year-old. Yeah, I knew the movie existed, It's so funny to see a young Scarlett Johansson in the movie. We're gonna talk about the book first, but I wanted to just throw this out there. I kept thinking about Jeff. I kept thinking about Iron Man 2 and how different she is. Her voice isn't nearly as raspy.
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Did
Yeah.
you hear the bass in her voice back then?
yeah,
Wow.
like she sounded like in the movie in 2001. It sounded like she had smoker's lung. I'm like, Jesus Christ, she sounds so different. And it's
I was going to say, Scarlett Johansson has always had a fairly deep voice. She doesn't
Mhm.
have a very traditional flighty, light voice,
right.
and I think that's part of her charm is that she sounds like she has an old soul.
Yeah.
You know, I think would be a good way to put it. She has a very unique delivery that really works for her. For God's sakes, Eddie, you're not guesting on tonight. Shut
she
up.
definitely grew into her voice by the time we got to Age of Ultron. I'm thinking about her scene with Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo, and how natural she sounds in that scene speaking. And then I listen to her give dialogue in Ghost World, and I'm like, that voice shouldn't come out of that body. It is the weirdest thing.
Apparently, they actually wanted Thora Birch originally to play her role, but when she read the script, she asked to be switched over to the role of Enid.
Yeah,
So.
she definitely makes a good Enid. So yeah, I actually had never, I wouldn't have known that this was an adapted comic book until I looked at that Wikipedia page. And so once I saw there was an opportunity to look at it, I was like, oh, I want to check this out. I'm really into the indie comic as movie thing. So I'm anxious to talk about this. So let's get into it. So we'll talk about the comic first. Ghost World is a graphic novel by David Clowes. It was serialized in issues 11 through 18 of Clowes' comic book series 8 Ball and was published in book form in 1997 by Fantagraphics Books, which you can actually still buy it from that publisher. It was a commercial and critical success and developed into a cult classic. This is a bizarre book, man. I'm really surprised this actually caught fire the way that it did. But the synopsis goes like this. Enid Coleslaw, which is a hilarious name, and Rebecca Doppelmayr are two cynical, intelligent teenage girls who were best friends in the 1990s. They have recently graduated from high school and spend their days wandering around their unnamed town, criticizing pop culture and the people they encounter while wondering what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. They are attracted to boys, but also unhappily entertain the possibility they might be lesbians. Their friendship is very close, but as the book goes on, tensions between them build, especially over Enid's plans to move away to college. They also have a quiet friend named Josh. Throughout the book, the two girls enjoy teasing him, but they also are attracted to him, and eventually a romantic triangle forms. A section in the middle of the story features Clowes in a cameo as a cartoonist that Enid admires, with whom she is infatuated, but finds creepy and a perv when she actually sees him. The comic ends with Enid and Rebecca separating. While they speak half-heartedly of getting together sometime, the easy intimacy they once knew is long gone. Rebecca is now in a relationship with Josh and seems on her way to settling into a normal life, while Enid, having failed to get into college, is in as much of a misfit as ever, and finally leaves town alone to start a new life. Jeff, I'll start with you. This was a bizarre read for me. What did you think?
Well, it's not. It's really not my sweet spot at all. Like as far as stuff to read, like it was a very uncomfortable at times for me to read it, just because it was kind of boring to me. I won't lie to you. It's just not my kind of comic book. Like it's not
Right.
my deal. But basically, I felt like it's definitely I don't, my daughter's 17 years old. I wouldn't care if she read this. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I don't think she would. To be honest with you, I don't think I'd be able to get her to do it. But I felt like I guess I can see how some people could get into this type of comic. I get it. It's just not. Again, it's not like in my purview of what I would typically pick to read. I found it to be kind of like weird. And like the of course, I know we're going to talk about it later, but the comic books and what goes on in the movie are very different.
Yes.
So, like that, kind of surprised me.
Yeah, one of the things my takeaway from this, Alexis, was this really had no plot. We start with, they're just now getting out of high school, and it ends with Enid deciding she's just going to start a new life, which she talks about throughout the book, starting a new life elsewhere, just sort of reinventing herself in a new place. But in the middle, they're just kind of doing shit. And there's no, like they don't get into any kind of real trouble. There's no hurdles. There's really no arc. There's nothing that pushes the plot forward except for the passage of time. And even in the movie, which we'll get to shortly, at least we have the relationship between Steve Buscemi and Thora Birch, and that somewhat propels the plot forward. But here, like, I got to the end of the book, and it could have been another 100 pages, it could have been another 10 pages. It wouldn't have made a difference. Like, there was no goal for either of these characters. It's like, here's a slice of these two cynical teenage girls' life and what they're doing in this town. And then that's it. And I was like, I get the author's perspective. I get what he was going after. And I certainly can see the appeal. Like, I think in the Wikipedia page, this was compared to Catcher in the Rye. And I can certainly see the appeal to like teenagers looking for that sort of thing. But as I said to Jeff, like, I had a rough time getting through this.
It is kind of a weird book to read. One of the things I noticed is that Clowes has got a very interesting pacing with his book. A lot of times there's no columns that say like a week later, 2 days later, meanwhile, or anything. It just sort of slam cuts from one person talking to a completely different scene with another person talking. And it takes you a second to go, oh, okay, we're now following this person. It'll have Enid mentioning something to her dad, and then all of a sudden it'll cut to Becky talking to Josh or something.
Right.
It actually, what it really reminded me of, and it wouldn't surprise me if the filmmakers of this movie took inspiration from this book, it kind of reminded me of Superbad. The idea of an evolution of two characters, two teenagers specifically, who just kind of come to the realization that they are on different paths now that they are forced to confront adulthood. And I'm guessing that's what Clowes is really going for. The idea is that it's the evolution of these characters that moves the pacing along. And I get that's not everybody's thing. I understand that because it is kind of a weird book to get through. Part of my other problem is that, God forgive me, I don't like the way a lot of the characters look. Clowes has a very unique art style and it works for him, but some of the characters were just very ugly. And I don't know if he was designing that on purpose or not. You have the character Melora, I believe her name is, who shows up periodically to talk to the girls and everything. But the way she's drawn, she looks like the world's worst caricature of Jackie Onassis.
In the movie, she's really pretty.
Yeah, she's very pretty. And I get the idea she's supposed to be pretty and popular and friendly, because Lord knows I knew a lot of girls like that who were just like, hey, how are you? I'm like, we're not technically friends. You're just being nice because that's just who you are. So I see where they're going with her. But it's very hard to get the idea until you really get through the book and you think about, so who was the Melora character? You have, Josh is supposed to be the guy they're both dreaming over and how cute he is, but he's very generic looking and it's a little hard to tell. It's like, what about him makes him so good looking? And then you have the one anti-Semite jerk character who I don't know what the hell was going on with his design with the stretched face, the giant nose, and those huge front teeth. It looked like he had no upper lip. Like that's, it was kind of hard to get through. And Mark, we've talked before about how we've read a lot of comic books and a lot of indie comics on this show where you appreciate a unique take from the artists on how they want their characters to look. But if it doesn't appeal to you personally, you're going to have a hard time reading the book.
Yeah, I have the book here and I'll kind of show it on screen here. This is another problem I had with this book is that it's not black and white. It's teal black and white. And
technically it's monochrome. It is.
Okay. And it was a little hard to read because, everything's kind of the same 2 or 3 colors. And you're right. And a lot of the facial shapes, a lot of the looks of the characters.
I have it too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Are just not pleasant to look at. We went through that with another one of these comics where, like, I want to say it was like The Boys or something, or something we talked about where it was like it was Sandcastles. Where Sandcastles.
Oh, right. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, God. Why do you have to put that book back in my head? I no more M. Night Shyamalan.
It's hard to tell characters apart and they look ugly. And so it's like, it's not a pleasant read aesthetically. And I don't want to trash the book entirely because I see its value. I think if you're a writer and you're like, I want to speak to teenage girls, I want to be a voice for them, and I want them to identify with this story. I want them to be able to see themselves in this narrative. I think that's where the book has value. And I think and I certainly knew a lot of girls like that. And I remember even being, a teenager being very cynical, and
you a cynical teenager? Nah.
Yeah, I know.
You were captain of the pep squad and you know it.
So like I said, for those people, it's funny, we were talking about this with my son. When you are so much smarter than everyone around you and you just find yourself saying like, gosh, I'm surrounded by idiots all the time, and you're finding a way to interact with the world to where you're not driven crazy or depressed. Books like this, are good for those people. They like, oh, this is a way of saying I'm not alone. But as just a purely pleasurable read, like I said, and we'll go final remarks on this and then we'll move on. I kept waiting for something to happen, and I'm just not that interested in two girls cattily going, oh my God, it's Satanists over there, we should follow them, or what they do to the poor guy who in the movie is played by Steve Buscemi, where he leaves an ad in the paper to meet up with a woman, and they prank him and they say it's her, and he ends up being stood up, obviously. Like, you're kind of shitty people, and I don't enjoy reading about you.
There is something to that. I kind of had an epiphany while I was reading this book, if you can believe it. The epiphany is not that we need to play fetch. Sorry. She was calm, and then she saw me get out the microphone, and then it was like, oh, it's playtime now, right? Because Lord knows, Mark, she hears your voice, and then it's like, oh, okay, now I get to get on camera. Again, I was very cynical growing up, but I started thinking more about how they talk about the other girls, and I realized teenagers all want something to hate.
Mm-hmm.
Every teenager, even the non-cynical ones, even the popular ones, they want to make fun and hate the unpopular kids. Teenagers are so driven by their hormones, the confusion and everything, that what they want more than anything, even though they don't realize it, is they need to get out their emotions by hating something.
Looking for something to rebel against.
Yeah, every teenager wants something to rebel against, wants something to hate, wants something to say, I'm better than this.
Yeah. I think it's a part of the national growth, Jeff, of one's personality is, you don't have one early on as you're growing up, and then you start to develop an identity as you get older. And you start, and in the beginning, you pull that identity from your parents, and your family, and then you get to be a teenager, 13, 14, 15, and this is where you're trying on different hats and you're trying to figure out who you are. And in many cases, you're running up and down staircase, you're running away from your parents. It's like whatever it is that you grew up with, you're rejecting it because you are trying to desperately find your own personality and your own perspective on life. And I think that definitely comes out in the characters in this book, that they are, they are doing the thing where they are rejecting the small town. So, because, they're so much bigger than this. But what you realize in the narrative is how small they actually are. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, I mean, they never defined that, like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, they never there's never like any kind of eureka moment where like any of the characters reach some kind of like highlight in like their journey or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
some epiphany.
Yeah, like not, like they have no goal. Like like there's no like like, I mean, at least like when you read like Marvel comics, like, what's going on with Captain America in a Captain America comic book. You know what I mean? Right. Like, he's got a goal, like, but like, I just don't relate at all to like this like you were talking about, Mark, about how there's no plot. I mean, I relate more to the movie than I do to like the book, just because like I do better with like the actual seeing the physical acting and and the characters as people and everything. And I feel like they're almost like nihilistic, like at least like what's her name? Is it Ida? Enid. She seems almost like nihilistic to some extent. Like, she doesn't really care about anything, like, really, or isn't all that interested in anything.
Well, I think that's a very valid point that you're making, Jeff, and we'll end with this, and then we'll move on to the movie.
If I can jump in, Mark, I agree with you, but I think that's kind of why it appeals so much to younger audiences, because so many teenagers are kind of nihilistic. They're confused. They don't really know what's going on. I feel that this appeals because not every person comes to an epiphany, and a lot of people sure as fuck don't come to epiphanies when they're teenagers. I wish to God I had more epiphanies when I was a teenager, and I didn't waste like so many years screwing up so many things because I didn't have life figured out yet.
This almost has like a tragic dramatic structure in that you have one character who just sort of you have characters who in the beginning are sort of rejecting everything around them, and are trying to ascend. They both fail. One just sort of accepts her lot in life and gets and goes to the boyfriend and decides she's just going to make a life of it here in town, and that's Rebecca. And then you have Enid, who decides she's just going to run away. Like, both of them fail. They both fail to make to ascend to anything that they had been talking about in the beginning of the book. And the movie is somewhat the same thing. But that's sort of the structure of the book here, is that, and it is interesting. It's because you rarely see sort of the unhappy, tragic ending in a lot of stories. This one's sort of brave in that respect. Like I said, you have Enid who runs away and decides she's just going to start all over again and try to be a new person. And then you have Rebecca, who's like, I'm just going to kind of give in here. It's funny. I wrapped up watching The White Lotus on HBO earlier today, and there's a character that does something very similar. She has a choice to be the trophy wife or to be her own person, and out of sort of fear and anxiety and comfort, she chooses to be the trophy wife. And her line is, "I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happy," which I thought was an interesting take. Before we move on, I just want to talk about one of our sponsors here, and that is Grammarly. Grammarly's AI powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. Do download Grammarly today. Go to getgrammarly.com/W2M network. Again, it's getgrammarly.com/W2M network to download Grammarly for free. All right, so let's get to the real exciting part of this. Ghost World, the movie, starring Thora Birch, Scarlett Johansson, Brad Renfro, and Steve Buscemi. And this came out in 2001 and won all kinds of awards. This thing, or nominated, won some awards, nominated for awards, was a runner-up. This apparently very well received. And the plot goes like this. Best friends Enid and Rebecca face the summer after their high school graduation with no plans for their future other than to find jobs and live together. The girls are cynical social outcasts, but Rebecca is more popular with boys than Enid. Enid's diploma is withheld on the condition that she attend a remedial art class. This is not in the book. Even though she is a talented artist, her art teacher, Roberta, believes that art must be socially meaningful and dismisses Enid's sketches as nothing more than light entertainment.
I wanted to strangle this character with every fiber of my being.
The Enid or the art teacher?
The art teacher.
Okay, we'll talk about that. The girls see a personal ad in which a lonely middle-aged man named Seymour, played by Steve Buscemi, asks a woman he met recently to contact him. Enid makes a prank phone call to Seymour, pretending to be the woman and inviting him to meet her at a diner. The two girls and their friend Josh secretly watch Seymour at the diner and make fun of him. Enid soon begins to feel sympathy for Seymour, and they follow him to his apartment building. Later, they find him selling vintage records in a garage sale. Enid buys an old blues album from him, and they become friends. She decides to try to find women for him to date. Enid has, meanwhile, been attending her remedial art class, and she persuades Seymour to lend her an old poster depicting a grotesquely caricatured black man, which was once used as a promotional tool by the Coon Chicken Inn, the fried chicken franchise now known as Cook's Chicken, where Seymour works in corporate. Enid presents the poster in class as a social comment about racism, and Roberta is so impressed with the concept that she offers Enid a scholarship to an art college. But, like what happens on the regular.
Yeah, like I said, I mentioned that before the show. It's like, you mean I could have gotten a full scholarship to art school just by showing a poster I found in the trash?
Yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah. I took the hard way to get into art school.
Seymour receives a phone call from Dana, the intended recipient of his personal ad. Enid encourages him to pursue a relationship with Dana, but she becomes unexpectedly jealous when he does so, like you do. Enid and Rebecca's lives start to diverge. While Enid has been spending time with Seymour, Rebecca starts working at a coffee shop. Enid gets a job at a movie theater so she can afford to rent an apartment with Rebecca, but her cynical attitude gets her fired on the first day. The girls argue, and Rebecca abandons the idea of living with Enid. When Enid's poster is displayed in an art show, school officials find it so offensive. How offensive did they find it? They found it so offensive that they forced Roberta to give her a failing grade and revoke the scholarship, because that's what happens. Enid turns to Seymour for... I just want to say about that. Normally I get irritated when we stop the plot synopsis, but man, I remember back when I lived in New York, there was an art piece called Piss Christ, which was a cross that was put in a jar of urine, and this thing sat prominently in the Brooklyn Museum of Art. It stretches credulity just a bit. I'm just saying. Moving on. He unsuccessfully tries to contact Enid, only for Rebecca to tell him about Enid's prank phone call, describing the way they mocked him at the diner. Seymour is upset and goes to the convenience store where Josh works. Another customer ends up in a violent confrontation with Seymour, resulting in his being injured and hospitalized. Enid visits him in the hospital to apologize. After everything that has occurred, Enid gives into her childhood fantasy of running away from home and disappearing. She has seen an old man, Norman, continually waiting at an out-of-service bus stop for a bus that will never come. Finally, as Enid watches from across the street, Norman boards an out-of-service bus. The next day, while Seymour discusses the summer events with his therapist, Enid returns to the bus stop and boards the out-of-service bus when it arrives. A post-credit scene shows an alternate version of Seymour's scene in the convenience store in which he wins the fight and is not injured. All right, I'll go to you first. Jeff, what were your thoughts on this film?
Well, I mean, I was pretty happy with it overall. I mean, by the end of it, like I walked away from it feeling positive towards it. But at the same time, some of the same, tropes that we discussed a moment ago with the plot of the book are the same issues that pop up in the movie. Kind of the same thing with Enid, with the character with Thora Birch. I don't know if it was the way she portrayed the character or if it was how it's supposed to be, but she made no sense to me. I didn't get what her premise was with anything. You know what I mean? I never could connect with her as a character and understand what are you upset about, or what are you down about, or what's I could never really figure that out with her. And I felt they really portray with Rebecca in the movie this that she seems responsible at least and wants to progress in life to some extent, and well, you should get a job and we should get an apartment together and reminding Enid about it over and over again and everything. And I don't know, I mean, is the whole point supposed to be that again she's a nihilist and she tried to work for a day and she got fired at the first day at her job at the movie theater or whatever, and it's all a big F you to the world or something? I don't know, but I don't really understand what the mess. Maybe because I don't know, because I'm watching it at this age. Maybe if I watched it when I was Alex said, a junior in high school or whatever, or senior or whatever, I probably would have felt differently about the movie. But watching it now, I felt what's the point? Again, the lack of plot almost, at least with the Steve Buscemi Enid relationship in the film, that gives you something to connect to and bond to, and gives the film kind of some purpose and whatnot. Yeah. But then the way that they wrapped that up with them having sex, which was kind of weird because she's 18 and he's 40 something years old or whatever, you know what I mean? I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't do that with an 18-year-old girl, but that's just me. But that was kind of weird. I can remember seeing this movie coming when it came out back in the day and thinking to myself, why is Steve Buscemi making out with this Thora Birch? This is crazy. Did she have to sign some kind of waiver or something to do that stuff? But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, at least with the movie, I understood what was going on for the most part. With the book, I was confused by some of what was going on at times. I didn't really understand some of the characters and stuff like that. So I guess again, you've got to look at it with the lens of like the fact that it came out in 2001. I can see why it was successful back then.
Sure. I think what the movie does exceptionally well, and I like this movie a lot. I like this movie a lot more than I like the book. And here's why. The book alludes to the fact that Enid is in some ways psychologically damaged. She self-sabotages. You know, she does not allow herself to be successful. But I don't think the book does the world's best job of portraying that. The movie, that is the movie. This is the movie about how Enid has every opportunity in the world to better herself and will always make the wrong choice. Just she psychologically compelled to, done so out of anxiety, whatever the reasons are. I think, you know, the thing that comes across to me about the Enid character, Alexis, is how much of her cynicism and, as Jeff keeps saying, her nihilism is a cover for her own insecurities. And those insecurities cause her to not just damage her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. You know, Rebecca ends up cutting her off because she's trying to move upwards and onwards with her own life, such as she can. But even there, you know, she's moving in with her. She's not moving in with her. But the real big one is what she does to Steve Buscemi. She wrecks this guy's life. She's like an atom bomb. And those all come out of her own psychological damage.
Agreed. I think it's also the idea of somebody discovering for the first time in their life when their actions actually have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is something I think a lot of us went through when we were teenagers. The first time we got fired from a job, the first time something that we wanted that we thought we always thought we'd get, we don't get, and we don't know what to do. And you see that throughout the movie, especially with her art school. We know she's a talented artist, but she has to take this remedial art course, and it's pretty clear originally she took it because she just didn't give a, she didn't care about school. But now she's at odds with her teacher because this crazy ass art teacher thinks that all art needs to be socially meaning. And when she shows her doodles, which are good, very good, apparently not done by Clowes, but done by the daughter of R. Crumb, if you can believe it. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
The director had previously done a documentary on Crumb, and he actually contacted Crumb's daughter and said, they were like, why don't we have Clowes do it and be a nice Easter egg? And the director said, no, we need a female artist to draw these.
Huh.
So she's the one who did it. She's very talented, but the teacher dismisses it as light entertainment. So that's one of the reasons she brings in that poster, is that she's basically saying, fine, this is what you want, I'll give it to you. And then when things start to fall around her and she's getting upset, that's when she, does decide to try to go for the art scholarship. She's like, well, I hope it's not too late, because she's finally starting to feel like things are not going to go the way I wanted them to, the way I always thought they would. Crap, I got to scramble now to try to pick myself up, or I'm just going to fall flat on my back.
See, I took it a little bit differently. I feel like she starts to grasp at things like the art school or moving in with Rebecca, because there's a great line from The White Lotus. There's a line said about a character, and I think it applies to Enid as well. It's not that you want anything, you just want more than the next person to you. And I feel like that's Enid, where it isn't so much that even she wants a job and she wants an apartment or she wants to go to art school. It's that she doesn't want anyone else to have more than she does. She doesn't want Rebecca to be more successful than her. She doesn't, the Steve Buscemi character was sort of a fun plaything, but then when he starts to have a relationship, she's like, well, we can't have that happen, because then what about me? And then once he breaks it off with Dana and they end up sleeping together, she's like, oh, well, I don't need this anymore. And it's not said outright, but it's definitely implied in the subtext. And that is all damage. That is all a variety of personality disorder and anxieties and whatnot. And I think that's what, I do so much of, media commenting through these podcasts. I forget to remind people that I'm a licensed social worker, who deals in psychology, and these things appeal to me. And so I think that was the hook for me with this, was she's such a broken person. And she's so, and she's, as Jeff was pointing out, she's so negative, but you want her, the hook with her is you want her to figure it out and get better. and just like the book, and we can start comparing the book to the movie now, it ends the same way. As they say about Frodo, after walking three movies to Mount Doom, he fails in his mission to destroy the ring. After you go this journey with Enid, she fails, and she's like, "Screw it, I'm just going to run away." And I again, I think that's sort of the movie's brilliance, is that it's not afraid to show you that people don't always have a happy ending. It doesn't always work out for them. They don't always make the best decisions.
But Mark, do you feel like Thora Birch actually was like conveyed all that though, like physically, like in her acting? Like, do you feel like she really pulled that off? Because I don't feel like she really, like, I don't know, me personally, I'm not trying to be overly critical. And I like Thora Birch. I mean, at least I used to like her when she was like active and everything and whatnot. I thought she was great in American Beauty.
I was gonna say, what the hell happened to her?
Yeah, you know what? I'm pulling up her Wikipedia page. Where did she disappear to? Hang on a second.
I didn't look it up earlier. I think let's take a moment and play what happened to Thora Birch now, because
that's what I was wondering myself.
She was in American Beauty and then she just disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, American Beauty was like a massive hit. I mean,
apparently she had a reoccurring role on The Walking Dead for a couple of years, 9 episodes.
Oh my God, she was in that 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Oh God. Okay. I love that movie, and I love that scene between Thora Birch and Jeremy Irons, because it is basically overacting versus underacting. Jeremy Irons is chewing the hell out of every ounce of scenery he's in, and it's clear he's having the most fun he's ever had in his life in this role, and I love it. I'm a huge Jeremy Irons fan, but when he's doing that scene, Thora Birch, oh my God, what was the line I heard from another reviewer? It was like, she looks like she's reviewing her. She looks like she's memorizing her lines for Ghost World in every scene she's in. Well, she just does not care.
She's been acting. I mean, she had 3 movies in 2018. She had 3 movies in 2019, and she's had, she had a reoccurring role in The Walking Dead from 2019 to 2020, and she's got something coming up where she's in some.
It's the Wednesday Addams live action series that Tim Burton's directing. She's not playing. She's playing another character named Tamara Novak. I have absolutely no idea who the hell that's supposed to be.
So so she's been active. She just hasn't. She wasn't in a Marvel movie, so we all missed her. Yeah.
What did you think about Scarlett Johansson's performance, though, guys? Like, I mean, do you think? Did you like how she played that character and everything and whatnot? Do you feel like she outacted like Thora Birch at that stage?
Let me. I'll start here, and then we'll go to Alexis. I really enjoyed Scarlett Johansson in this. I think she plays the. I think she has a charisma and a subtlety to her, to where you want her to succeed and you feel bad for her when Thora Birch's character keeps screwing her over. My one criticism, and this kind of goes to what I was saying before about how that voice shouldn't have come out of that child at that age, 20 years ago, is she's a little mumbly mouth. She's a little like, she gives a lot of her line readings like, like, could you, Jesus Christ, yell something, emote, from the diaphragm, Scarlett.
I was like, I'd like to remind you, this is the actress who I think like less than 2 years later would get an Oscar nomination multiple times for multiple years in a row. She's the breakout actress.
I think because she's done stuff like Ghost in the Shell, I think it was, and the Avengers movies and shit, people are now dismissing her. But she's been in like Jojo Rabbit. I believe that was her. She was in
such a good role in that movie.
She was in something with George Clooney recently. She's a hell of an actress, and she gets easily dismissed because of the pop stuff that she does. But to answer your question, Jeff, I thought she was brilliant in this. Go ahead, Alexis.
Yeah. She was good in this. The problem is that the director and apparently Clowes also, since he also wrote the screenplay for this, they decided to diminish her role quite a bit. There's a lot of parts that in the graphic novel that her character stands out. We do not see that. They talk. I mean, in the Wikipedia page, they talk about how in the film she's now, getting into a thing with Josh. And I'm like, she shared like 3 scenes with Josh, and I think every scene she was with Enid. So if there was chemistry between the two of them, I sure as hell didn't see it. She is a great actress, but I think that the film does kind of falter a little bit. Even though Enid and Seymour are the more interesting characters, I would have liked to have seen more of Scarlett Johansson's character. If nothing else, I think that it would have been a good control group against which we could see how bad things are spiraling out of control for Enid. I think it would have been better. I mean, we see her with the coffee shop and getting the apartment, but then she talks about how she's going out with her friends. And I thought maybe we could have seen her actually hanging out with the friends. Like, well, I have to go hang out with Enid, but you know what? I want to go hang out with you guys, sort of her showing how she develops forward, whereas Enid is stalling, just kind of paddling water.
The book is more of the pair against the world until they split at the end of the book. The movie is the Enid story, where Scarlett Johansson's character is basically a side character.
Yeah.
Jeff, I wanted to say something to you before, kind of going back to, the Thora Birch character doesn't sound like she spoke to you the way that she spoke to me, which is fine. We're all going to have, we all come from different backgrounds, and we're all going to have different kind of antenna to what reaches us through film and media. But I have to say, for me, and this is just me personally, this is not an objective thing, the Thora Birch character really spoke to me, and I was able to see the different nuances in her personality. And I understand what you're saying. She's not, the problems with her character are not upfront. They're not easily recognizable. I saw them, but I can see where other people watching the movie, it might get past them, and you might even, and maybe this is what you were saying without saying it. It might have almost been too subtle a performance to where these things you're supposed to be conveying are not being conveyed.
That's a very well put way to explain it. That's exactly. I just think that she didn't really emote to me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that it was necessary for there to be some kind of seriously horrible thing, like shit to happen to her or something like that, or that whatever. I just mean, I wasn't expecting her to break down in every other scene.
But I was going to say, she's not like an Aubrey Plaza or Brittany Murphy, who, when they have to play crazy gals, they're all over. They're like, Tigger. They're just bouncing all over the screen.
No, she still made the movie entertaining and fun to watch and everything and whatnot. I'm not saying, I don't want to take anything away from her actual performance in the movie was actually really good, and made it interesting. You know what I mean, as a character, even though she did really screw the Seymour character hardcore.
Yeah, I felt really. So there's a great scene with them, and we can talk about this for a minute. There's a great scene where they're in the car, and Steve Buscemi rather, is talking about how he just hates people, he doesn't relate to people, he's finding it difficult to navigate the world because, again, he's one of these really, really smart people who just can't handle the fact that the world, boy, do we know lots of people like this, Alexis. They get mad that the world doesn't quite bend to them the way they need it to. And
you hired a majority of those people.
I don't want to talk about it.
I'm not naming names. I'm just saying, go check the fucking roster.
And so he's sort of reacting to that. And it's funny because it's a very subtle thing that she does. But Thora Birch kind of looks at him and almost has this is this what I sound like face? She sees herself being reflected in him. And I think that's what draws her to him. Number one, is oh, good, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one. It's not just me and Rebecca who see the world this way. There's another person too. And he's twice our age. So I thought that was it was a fun scene for Steve Buscemi. And I think it was a very powerful scene for the movie, Alexis.
Definitely. Steve Buscemi is such a criminally underrated actor. I know he often gets cast as the weirdos and the, the outsiders and everything, but I've seen him in some movies. He's honestly I think a brilliant actor. He plays so many different characters and he does so well. There's a movie I always remember with him. I doubt very many people have seen it. It's called The Imposters. It was actually written and directed by Stanley Tucci, who's in it. And he plays this loud singer who's called Happy. His first name is Happy, and he's suicidal. And it's freaking hilarious. Various times he tries to kill himself while he's on, because the whole movie takes place on this ocean liner back in the I think the 40s, and it's just so funny. His character is just. I don't like laughing at suicidal people, obviously, but the way they make it so hilarious, it's really well done. And he sings. Steve Buscemi is a good singer. He really is. And he actually performs a number of the musical numbers in the movie. I love seeing him really get to stretch his technique, so to speak.
Alexis, it's something I want to talk to you specifically about. And then, Jeff, you can weigh on this too if you want. But clearly Thora Birch, in presenting the Coon poster, is trying to agitate the teacher. That's the way I read that. Like, she was being passively antagonistic, you know. And when the teacher almost calls her on it, like, she has to now, like, well, you brought this to class. If we're going to take this seriously, you now have to defend this thing. And she comes up with a fairly reasonable explanation. She's able to think on her feet. But it definitely, it was an attack on the student next to her who did the tampon sculpture. And the whole idea of this teacher sort of raving about all of these wild art projects, and Thora Birch going, well, I'm going to do a very punk rock, very, rebellious thing, and I'm going to bring in this poster, and I'm like, I'll hide behind the guise that I'm doing social commentary, but really, I just wanted to bring a racist poster in to make everyone feel uncomfortable because I hate you all. I just want to get your reaction to that.
Okay, there's another Clowes book that was also turned into a movie called Art School Confidential. Either of you seen it?
I have not.
Mm-mm.
Very good movie. There's a scene, and I swear to God, watching this again, I've realized that scene in particular, Clowes must have written that exact scene. I know that this was written by him and the director, but that scene, if you compare it to another scene in Art School Confidential, it's like, no, Clowes has got something to say here. There's a scene in Art School Confidential where each of the students in the art school have to present self-portraits. Mm-hmm. And our main character, played by Max Minella, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, presents this very, very beautiful, it's either graphite or it's charcoal, but it's a very well done picture. And there's a bunch of different styles, and there's this one girl who drew something, and it looks like a 5-year-old drew it. Very sketchy, very, colored pencil, very, it's like, and I color it in like this, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And the students in the class all rave on it, saying how different it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the main character's like, well, what about mine? They're like, yours looks like it was printed off of a computer. At least hers has something unique to say about it. And there's just such a frustration in that. I swear to God, same thing with this, the fact that, Enid is a very talented artist, but art in general is so subjective, and it is so hard to know what will please your audience. And, it's very clear that Enid is trying hard with her journal. She's got talent, but what the teacher goes for is a tampon in a teacup, which probably took 5 minutes to put together. Hot glue, done.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that's kind of what she does with the poster, is that she's trying to topple this other up-and-coming artist at her own game. Just saying, it's like, this is a found object, and I don't think she even realizes that it's going to get her the scholarship, but she is trying to play into what she knows this teacher is clearly fishing for. Mm-hmm. Again, this art teacher, oh my God, this was the most annoying character, because I have known so many professional artists and art teachers who are like this. That stupid film that she shows in the beginning. I took a film course. It was a broadcasting course, but it was a film course in college. Mm-hmm. And my teacher warned us on day one, before we were even given any assignments. He said, I'm warning you now, you will have to turn in student films. If any of you turn in that black and white symbolism, maudlin German expressionism crap, I am flunking you on principle.
So I watched that scene. Jeff, I don't know if you're familiar with the band The Dead Kennedys. Mm-hmm. Do you know them at all? Okay. Yeah. Alexis, you know the Dead Kennedys, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So Jello Biafra, who's a former singer of the Dead Kennedys, told the story about the thing that got their album in trouble with the government and what got them sued for distributing harmful matter to minors, was that they included in the album an H.R. Giger poster of a bunch of like vaginas.
It's Geiger. All he ever drew were penises and vagina.
That is the entire Alien set, as a matter of fact. Penises and vaginas.
I'm sorry. Anyone who talks about the symbols, like, no, there's no symbolism, okay? Geiger needed to get laid. Or he got laid too much. I don't know.
A little frustrated. Anyway, but yeah, but that's what I always think about. Like, I'm probably the Edward or not. God damn it, the soup can guy.
Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol, people like, oh, his painting of the soup can, it's amazing. It was like, it was this like, wonderful thing. It was like a fucking soup can, man. There's another one where I think it was like a white canvas and it had like a red dot on it. And it was like, but what does the dot mean? And it's like, man, I'm not going to take away from anyone's like artistic expression, but some of this stuff, like you're saying, it's like that took no effort. There's no possible way you have a point of view with this thing that you threw some ink on and shoved it out there into the world.
There's a very famous art piece. For the record, what you're talking about is mostly called Dadaism, which is the school of thought where it's art, but how is it art?
Right.
And I know exactly how pretentious that sounded, and that's what Dadaism is. It's the most pretentious, pain in the ass, bane of existence to anyone who tries to call themselves a professional artist. There's a very famous piece. It's a toilet. It's a urinal on its side with something written on the lid, and that's it. There's a famous Dadaism painting. It's a picture of the Mona Lisa, and she's got like a mustache drawn on her, and that's it. Oh my God, the arguments I got into with my professors about Dadaism, they're just like, well, that's art. I'm like, it's crap. I'm sorry. It's crap. But it's that school of thought, and I hate it with every fiber of my being, and I know exactly which art piece you're talking about, and I hate that too, but it fits into that school of thought, and whoever coined that school of thought, I wish I had a DeLorean so I could go back and shoot them.
Okay. Why can't I get through one podcast without someone on the panel threatening to murder somebody else? I got Robert
hired us.
I got Robert threatening to murder Margot Robbie. See, Jeff, you don't have to deal with this on the MCU's Bleeding Edge. No one's trying to murder people on your podcast.
No.
We're gonna wrap here. I'm gonna give you the last word, Jeff, on this film. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we pretty much encapsulated it. I mean, like, I could probably go on and talk about some different aspects of the movie and this and that, but I'd just be nitpicking at that point. Again, like I said, I enjoyed it. Like, it wasn't a movie where I watched it and like I felt like, oh man, I spent 2 hours watching that. Like, I didn't feel that way at the end. You know what I mean? So that's always a positive. Like that's a good thing for me. Honestly, I was just happy to see Thora Birch. It was what's the word? It was like nice to see her again, because like I was a kid when I remember going to the theaters to see American Beauty in the theater when I was a kid, and like at the end of the movie, everybody in the movie just like sat there and like nobody moved. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was crazy for like a full.
It's one
like,
of those movies that does that to you. You need a minute to let everything sink in before you
like
can
a full
process.
2 or 3 minutes where nobody moved in the theater, and like people were like crying and everything. You know what I mean? And like and whatnot, and like it was really deep. Like that's the only time, other than like at the MCU films, that's the only other time I've been to a movie theater and I've seen that happen.
Passion of the Christ for me. I saw the Passion of the Christ 3 times, and I'm not particularly religious one way or the other, but I went to go see the Passion of the Christ 3 times with actually 3 different groups of people. And I remember at the end of every screening of the Passion of the Christ that I saw, people just, like you're saying, just didn't move. Just kind of sat there and like they needed a few minutes to compose themselves before they exited the theater. Like, good, bad, or indifferent, however you feel about Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, that is a rough watch.
I can't watch it. I have anxiety and depression sometimes, and I was warned actually by someone who we work with, Mark, who went to go see, and I was like, do you think I'd seen him? Like, if you go see this, you're going to be in a funk for 2 weeks and you're going to be curled up in the closet, and I'm going to have to deal with that. So no, don't go see it.
All right, Alexis, anything else about Ghost World you want to talk about? I will say this before my last words. I'm glad I watched this. I'm glad, Jeff, this was on your list. It's one of those. We're now thinking back to it as like, oh, as a film person, this is something that I should have watched. And I was glad to have read the book and compared it to the movie, and I thought this was a worthwhile discussion. This has got no rewatchability for me, though. This is one of those where I checked it off the list, and I'm like, okay, on the shelf you go. And I said those exact same words about the new Iron Maiden album, where it's like, I'm glad we did this. On the shelf you go, never to be rewatched again. I'll give you the last word, Alexis.
I am glad I saw this. It was available free on Prime Video, so I didn't have to pay a renter's fee for it because, it's good, but it's not one I really think I want to revisit anytime soon. But it has given me more of an interest in Clowes' work. I highly recommend checking out Art School Confidential, both the book and the movie, if you are a fan of this. Like I said, the man is incredibly talented. His work is really good. So yeah, I think it's good that it open up doors to more of his work.
So there's a lot of blues in the movie that gets played, and a little bit of punk rock here and there. I actually got a kick out of the, hey, you got to spruce it up a bit. You got to look like a yuppie. And the next thing she does, because she's oppositionally defiant, is dye her hair green. And she's walking around. That conversation she has in, I think it's the Record or the comic book store, where they're making fun of her punk rock bona fides, I laughed hard at, because boy, was that the first half of my 20s. But if you're into the music in the movie that gets played, you just want to listen to some blues or punk rock, we are giving away free 30 days of the Amazon Music Unlimited service. You go ahead and click the link at amazonmusic.com/W2M network. Fill out the sign-up process. You get a free 30 days on us to stream unlimitedly all you like. And then at the end of that 30 days, if you like it, you keep it. If you don't, you cancel. No fuss, no muss, no contracts, no pains in the butt. Get amazonmusic.com/W2M network for a free 30 days of the Amazon Unlimited service. All right, Jeff, plug time, plug tune in. You are in the middle of your weekly What If reviews currently, yes?
Yes. Yep. And you can always find us at the MCU's bleedingedge.org. That is our website, and it has all of our full podcast episodes and snippets of like the YouTube videos and stuff like that. But yeah, we're doing What If weekly. We just got done reviewing episode 5, so we're going into episode 6 next week, I guess. So the last episode was really good. We talked about that. We really enjoyed reviewing that. And I'm sure I'll probably be seeing Alexis on there again sometime, probably shortly. So, I mean, if her dogs could just be this good on like the MCU's Bleeding Edge, we'd be great.
Oh, this level of squeaking and barking is okay?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, okay. Because, yeah, it's like, I can't lock them in another room. I can't be in one room and lock it, because Cleo will scratch at the door and she will cry. And then I'll send you the bill for the repairs to the door frame.
Jeff, the other thing you guys are doing is a survey of the MCU Infinity Saga. I think the last thing you did was the Hulk, and what's the next one up is what, Thor? When you're done with What If?
We did Iron Man 2 as well. Okay. So we got Thor coming up, and we've got the Avengers, and that's going to be right in between What If and the Hawkeye Disney Plus series in November.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be back into that, and I'll be bringing you around for that too. I don't know how it's going to work out. Maybe we might end up doing like 2 shows or something like that for the Avengers, because again, like
I'm a diva. When you have Mark Radulich on your show,
yeah, I know.
Everybody else has to go away. It just has to be me and you and maybe Cybernetic Shark, but I need special treatment, sir.
No, we'll definitely, we got to reduce the roster down to like 4 people at the max or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yep. Alexis will tell you, I've had to do a hard cap on our shows. Like I'll have shows like Venom or Halloween or something where everyone comes out of the woodwork. What was it? Oh, Candyman. That was one where I literally had to split it into 2 different reviews because I had 97 people that wanted to talk about it. And
I have to skip the Venom 2 review because we have too many people who want to do it. And I've got a gamer world record, former world record speed run holder, current world record points holder for the Sega Genesis Maximum Carnage game. And
well, you're on the Venom 2 review.
I thought I wasn't on that because
you're on. No, it's you, Jason, me, and Rob. Is the damn you Hollywood for Venom 2.
Okay. Sorry. When you guys were discussing this, I had to mute the chat because I was at a dinner with friends, and I guess I missed some of the.
No, what I was telling you was I couldn't have your friend on unless he wanted to jump into the second round table that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and he appreciates the offer, but he doesn't really feel like jumping in with the sharks without me there.
I understand. All right, go ahead and let him know what kind of jewelry and where you're selling on that.
Honeysuckle Rose Creations, fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. Couple of things coming up. Number one, we're doing some new products. I'm working on a few redesigns. I am redesigning our famous Legend of Zelda themed Scrabble Tile charm bracelet. I also call it the It's Dangerous to Go Alone. Take this bracelet. We're putting in some new items and adding some updated art styles to that. Number two, we are going to be leaving next week for Cincinnati Comic Expo. It is our last show of the year. Oh, so excited. I love Cincinnati. It's always so much fun. I got to see Adam West actually at the show there a couple of years ago. I didn't get to meet him, but I saw him there. So really excited about that one. We always have a blast. Looking forward to it. We did just wrap up our Labor Day sale, but God help me, we're getting ready for the holidays. We're going to be getting ready for the big Black Friday sale that is going to be coming up here before too long. We also have had a couple of, I wouldn't call them conventions, but they're little one-day shows that have been popping up here in the fall. The Fountain City Mini-Con that we did a couple of months ago, it looks like they're actually working on having a few more of those one-day events here in the near future. So I'm talking with them to see if we could get a table there. I will let you guys know via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram on where we will be heading next after that. In the meantime, of course, our shops are fully stocked on Etsy and handmade at Amazon. And like I said, be on the lookout here in the next few weeks. We will be adding new products. We will be adding some new designs of some old products. Because if I don't design something at least once a month, I get itchy. But again, that's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, intersection of geek and chic.
All right. We just want to remind you to, wherever you found this, we are available on all your favorite podcatchers. And there's a link wherever you're finding this. If this is not your preferred place and you want to know where you can find us on your preferred podcatcher, there's a link in the description to our link tree with everywhere in the world that we're available. Please subscribe. That way you get all the new shows. And, if you like our stuff, there's also all the other W2M shows like Soccer to the Max, The Kickoff, Video Games to the Max, and all 97 Radulich and Broadcasting Network shows that we do, plus audio extras. We had the aforementioned extra roundtable that Alexis was on for Candyman. My wife and her friend did an audio-only extra doing a feminist perspective on Black Widow. And we're going to be doing a lot more of that in the future because apparently the nice little organization that I had for the Radulich and Broadcasting Network went right out the window, and I've got people coming on left and right. So we're going to be doing a lot more extras, roundtables, first reactions, stuff like that. And that's and you'll miss it if you're not subscribed. So like, comment, and subscribe, especially if you're an Apple user. We have one comment, on Apple, and it just says, "What the heck?" Someone else make a comment. I don't care if it's a recipe for rabbit stew. Just comment something else. And on that note, check out the rest of our great shows this week. We reviewed the new Iron Maiden. We reviewed Shang-Chi. We reviewed, there's a review up from James Wan's Malignant Man. So that's all in the archives for you to listen to. Plus, for you wrestling fans, myself and Chris Bailey, the modern day Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura of Wrestling Podcast, me and him, we reviewed AEW's All Out. All right, for Jeff Sloboda of the MCU's Bleeding Edge, for Alexis Hejna, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.